Behind the Shades.
How does a solo mother navigate their life in that situation that you just described?
Well, that's a tough one. That's a really tough one because I've been there. And what I did personally was focus on my children. And it came a time when it became a problem for the husband because I think he thought he was a child too, and that I should be taking care of him. And so if it was a case where he just minded his own business, I probably would have ignored him until the children were old enough, to be on their own. But because he wanted me to assume maternal responsibilities for him, then that wasn't going to work. And it became war. And so that was the end of the marriage. And I'm just talking about it from my perspective, my experience, because that's all I can talk about. But I think if you're in that position and the marriage is not working, and you want a marriage, because sometimes you're there and you're comfortable, even if the situation is not comfortable, you're comfortable in the situation. I don't know if you get that. So you let it slide and years pass, and one day you wake up and the kids are old enough and they don't need you that much anymore, so you both go your own ways. But it might not be a comfortable situation, right? And so you have to look at your life and see what kind of example you want for your children, one, and number two, what kind of life you want for you as a person, as a woman in that situation. And I mean, the reverse is for men, but like I said, my podcast is for moms, not dads. So I'm not a dad, so I can only speak from a mom's perspective. Never had a father, so I have no experience with that, right? So you as a mother in a situation where dad is in the house, but only physically, that you're going to have to take control of that situation if you're not comfortable with it. Because some people are, they don't, they're like, they might, everybody's on their own track, on their own road, right? And so you just have to decide what works for you and what doesn't.
That reminds me of a relationship where I became comfortable even though I knew it wasn't the best situation for me to be in. Right. And I think there's so many of us that when we kind of like negotiate within ourselves, right? We would say, you know what, Jennifer, I know this isn't working out, but you're the lesser of two evils, because what's out there is the devil. What's in here is kind of the quasi devil. So, I know this struggle. I don't know that struggle.
Right.
And I came to a point, because I don't have any children, and I came to the point where, like you mentioned, you're sitting back one day, you open your eyes and you're like, what the hell am I doing here?
Right.
Right? It's like, it just doesn't make sense to you anymore.
Right.
Did you reach that point? And if so, was that your type of revelation to yourself where like, I got to get out of this?
Yes. And I think it happens in different ways, but it happened to me in the sense that I married for relationship. I married for companionship. And the things that we discussed before we got married were forgotten when we were married. And I'm kind of a stickler for the rules sometimes. I'm like, I expect you to keep your word, right? Now, I can be flexible, but I expect you to keep your word. And when my life is getting left behind because you decide you're going to just do your own thing, then, we're going to have a problem. At least because I don't want to just sit around and and live a life of nothingness. I like to live a life that means something, And so I kind of forgotten your question, but I think you answered it anyway. So
No, you did. And for me, I'm very similar. When I get into a relationship, I say, okay, this is what I want. I want someone not to make me happy, but to make sure they're not making me unhappy.
right.
I can make myself happy. I'm very good at making myself happy.
Yes.
Right. And two is I want to make sure that the person I'm with is whatever it is that they're doing from a career or financial standpoint, that they're able to maintain that. Because if you can take care of yourself when we get together, I'm just a complement to it. I'm not here to supplement it. Meaning that all of a sudden, when you start you and I start dating, you're like, okay, I'm going to quit my job because I'm going to live off of terrain. No, not going to live off of me, right? I have a dog, and she costs me enough money. I don't need a grown man or woman child to take care of, right?
Right.
And I think you raised a good point where sometimes, even though we get into relationships with the best of intentions, and we get into relationships with dating with purpose, and we outline and say, hey, this is what I want. Can you fulfill this?
Yeah.
What some people I think miss is the fact that you agreed to the terms and conditions before we proceeded. Now, if you don't want to honor it, that should allow me to go my separate way peacefully.
Broken contract. Yeah.
Exactly. Was that, when you speak to women now, pulling from your own experience, do you help them to view it that way, making sure that their boundaries are set and maintained?
I try, but I also don't, being a Christian, I don't encourage divorce, right? Unless the situation is, it's just impossible. Like if he's cheating, then he's broken his contract. And, if he's beating you, he's broken his contract. And there are other things that may be considered the contract broken. But I think people should work a little harder on marriage. This, and I'm saying that from somebody who's been divorced 3 times, right? I'm going to say that. But I still don't like it. I look back and wondered if there was a time I could just hold, and just take my time before we called it quits. Because when you're in a marriage with the right person, I think it's just amazing, right? But you're with someone else. It's another human being with their own thoughts and dreams and thought patterns. And until you become one, thinking the same way, having the same purpose, it's going to take work. And even when you're on the same page, it takes work, right? But I think nowadays we're too quick to say, he's not pleasing me. She's not pleasing me. Time to move on. And I don't agree with that. I still don't,